Hello, everybody, and welcome back to AnimeSub, Episode 2. This is the second episode of AnimeSub. This is where we really get to see if we're going to continue on with this. You know, the pilot's always a fluke. And it should always be taken as a fluke. Anyways, what's up, everybody? Hello, hi, how are you? I hope everyone's doing well out there. I'm sure I don't need to go over all the announcements, you know. Hell's Paradise is getting a second season in January. I did watch the first season. I was not thrilled with it. I will be checking out the second season to see if they can pull me in a bit better. We've also gotten a new Chainsaw Man anime movie announced after the Reze arc. We're getting the Assassin arc now, which I will definitely be seeing. On top of that, Campfire Cooking wrapped up its second season. I'm going to wait to talk about that, though. We'll come into that one eventually, but that's about all that I kind of have in the anime world to talk about at the moment. Otherwise, I'm doing good. Christmas just came and went. I hope everyone had a lovely Christmas. I certainly had a great one. I'm now watching my cat prod at her food at the moment. Not sure why she doesn't just eat it out of the bowl, but instead she likes to pull it out and bat it around and play with it. So everyone give it up for Rumi, my cat, who is featuring in this podcast against her will and against mine. That said, I want to waste no time with getting into our topics today. I've 3 animes lined up for you, 2 TV shows, and 1 movie. The movie is connected to the first TV show that we're going to be talking about today, which is Blood Sea from 2011. Dark fantasy, heavily Sailor Moon inspired based off of the transformation that we see in the intro that never actually happens in the show. I'm going to come out the gate here and try to avoid giving too many spoilers away because I don't want this podcast to just be me recapping an anime to you. I'd much rather this be a discussion about the anime, so I'm going to avoid noting specific plot points. I do have to talk about the narrative when it comes to Blood Sea, unfortunately, because that is kind of where the bulk of my problems lie with this anime. So, for all of you Blood Sea fans out there, I am going to give you the pros real quick, because there are pros. There are things that I enjoy about this show. To start off with, if you're not familiar with what Blood Sea is, you're basically following Saya, who is this high school girl who, again, very Sailor Moon-esque during the day is a regular high school student, and then whenever night comes, she fights these monsters called Elder Barons. And that's kind of the dichotomy of the show for a large chunk of this season. This is a 12-episode anime. 1 season leads into the movie that we're going to talk about later. And to give you the things that I like about this show, I do think that the animation style, I'm just kind of nostalgic for it. It reminds me of the style of anime that was coming out when I was in high school. And so I have a kind of particular attachment to this style of anime that they're doing here. A lot of the animes that I watched in high school look very similar. And I dare even say, before I even got to high school, I want to say, maybe when I was in middle school, quite a few of the animes that were coming out looked quite a lot like Blood Sea. And I do like that animation. I do think that it's aesthetically pleasing. I do think that there are several shots throughout this anime that are very good looking. And I think the animation in general is passable. I think it's fine. The other thing that I find myself really enjoying in this show is the music. The music is very reminiscent of survival horror of the mid-2000s, I would say. A lot of the tracks remind me of Resident Evil, reminds me of Fatal Frame, reminds me of Devil May Cry. The soundtrack is really good. As a matter of fact, I found myself kind of listening to the soundtrack later during my writing time, actually. I found the soundtrack, especially the track that they use during the fights in particular, I think is really good, which kind of segues me into my next topic that I really enjoyed in this show, and that is the action and the fight sequences. I think the action and the fight sequences in this show are incredibly well animated. They look very fluid. They look very well thought out. I think that the fight scenes are something that you should watch. I don't recommend this show overall at the end of the day, but I do highly recommend watching some of the fight scenes from it because it does kind of lean into that Evil Dead, Kill Bill style of like when things bleed in this show, they bleed fountains. It also doesn't like turn away from being unflinchingly brutal with a lot of the killings that happen in this show. They don't shy away from the violence at all in this show. And I think that's kind of one of its strong suits is definitely how much it leans into how extreme its violence is. And that shows in the fight scenes. Saya's movement in the fight scenes is particularly very fluid and it's just animated great, and it's fun to watch. It's very exciting, and I think they do a great job of animating all of the fight scenes in this show. I also think the character designs are fun. I like the kind of edgy red and black that they go for, even though it kind of ends up being part of the story elements twist later on, and yeah, they do look kind of ridiculous, but I think that's the fun of it. I think I enjoy when things are able to have these kind of ridiculous outfits and able to lean into that as like a feature of the show, you know? I don't know. I like the school uniforms, the red and black with the chains on the neck. I think it's interesting. I think it's fun, and it kind of shows a sort of awareness to how not serious we're really taking the show, until the show does start taking itself really seriously. And this is where I'm going to start to get into my cons. Without giving away too much, there is a twist in this show that happens, I'm not even kidding, the second to last episode of the season. They hold off on having this twist happen until the second to last episode of the season, and then we sum everything up in the 12th episode, which you would probably think that doesn't sound like enough time for us to really figure out where this show's going or how this show's going to end. And you would be absolutely right, and that's because, once again, this show leads into a movie. But I feel the show, the twist ruins the show retroactively, and due to like little setup and very little foreshadowing, and just overall lazy execution, because straight up the twist happens in the same way that it kind of happens in Hell's Paradise whenever the antagonists finally come out in that show. I feel like people just step up and they just exposition the entire twist to us, not demonstrating anything. We don't let Saya like find this out naturally or something. People just confront her and they just tell her the thing, which is just, it's so bad and lazy in my opinion. I just think it's so lazy for us to just exposition away our twist. Not to mention, when again, this is a 12-episode anime. We had time to build up this twist. This was not, you know, I think that this would have actually benefited from being a 4 to 6 episode OVA instead of being a 12-episode anime, if they wanted to keep the kind of the way they were going to portray things the same. Because I would feel less betrayed if this happened in episode 5 out of 6, as opposed to happening in episode 11 out of 12, right? Because at that point, I hadn't expended as much. These are 26-minute episodes, so times that by 12, that's how much time I fucking wasted, how many minutes I wasted watching this show just to get to this point. The show is, unfortunately, this twist makes the show retroactively largely thriller in my mind, because you'll never be able to go through the show with the same mindset again, and honestly, the first 10 episodes are just going to feel like filler. And I've seen someone post that if you're going to watch this show, you need to approach it with this guide of only watching episodes 1 and 2, 7 and 8, 11 and 12. And if out of your 12-episode anime, I'm being recommended, and honestly, I concur with the idea that you should only watch half of the episodes, you have failed narratively. The show has failed narratively, and not only does it fail narratively, but we don't even get a conclusive ending in this anime, because once again, it ends with a cliffhanger ending so that we can get to the movie, which is, you know, if this was a better show, I would be really excited to get to the movie, but I don't think this is a very good show. I don't think that this is executed very well, and frankly, I'm kind of annoyed with it, to be honest. I find myself kind of annoyed with the show, with the way that it ended. I don't want to get too deep into it, because again, I'm trying to avoid just like discussing plot points and spoiling things for you, but there is a twist at the end of this show that does not land. It does not stick the landing at all. And a little side tangent I want to go on before I move on from this show. One of my biggest pet peeves in a TV show is when there are twins who, mind you, are already hard to tell apart. There are two twins in the show. You can only tell them apart because one does their bangs to the left and the other one does their bangs to the right. Something that really annoys me greatly is whenever people give their twins very similar names. Like if we were to have Bill and Will, or Ted and Fred, or, you know, anything like that, really. And in this show, we have Nene and No-No. And I need to know who came up with these Nene-ass names. I can't stand when twins have, oh, look, they have, they're twins, so we name them similarly. I'll fucking kill you. I'll fucking kill you, and I won't feel bad about it. Okay. Also, this came to me as a YouTube short recommendation to watch Blood-C, and I will never go through YouTube shorts for recommendations ever again. Biggest mistake of my life, frankly, and I should have known better. But I didn't, and I watched this show, and I finished it. Do I recommend Blood-C? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Unless you're going to watch it, really, honestly, if I was to recommend this show to you, I'm not going to recommend you actually watch this show. I'm going to recommend you look the fight scenes up on YouTube. Because if you look the fight scenes up on YouTube, you're going to get everything that you need out of that. Because honestly, the fight scenes are the best part of this show. The fight scenes are the best part of this show. There's nothing really going on with any of the characters. They try to force some character moments towards like the later half of the season, towards like episode 7 and so on. They try to, force some character things to happen, and none of it works. None of it's set up well. The writing is just abysmal here. It really feels like they knew what they wanted to get to. They just had no feasible idea of how to get there, or how to earn getting there narratively, right? So anyways, we move on from Blood-C to Blood-C The Last Ark, which is a terrible title, by the way. I'm just going to say that out the gate. The Last Ark is a terrible title. This came out a year later in 2012. Carries over a lot of the same stuff that Blood-C had. It's, the same genre, all that kind of stuff. It's just a continuation off of what happened in episode 12 of the show. So I'll give you a couple things that I like about this one once again. I really liked the animation, while not the nostalgic animation that I love from the 2011 show. They do have a much more refined, it's much sharper, it looks much better. It's just an all-around more aesthetically pleasing looking movie. And I like it in that regard. I think it does that really well. And I'm a bigger fan of this movie from a stylistic point. I think it looks better. I think it flows better. I generally just kind of think the movie's better than the show in a lot of ways. Stronger, better characters here. Mana is one that immediately comes to mind because she kind of plays a big role next to Saya. And I quite like Mana. I'm mixing up Saya and Mana's name because they're very, very closely intertwined in this movie. And I kind of like most of the ragtag group that Saya gets to hang around with during this. I'd like the two boys. I'll be honest, I don't know what purpose they actually serve to the group that they're a part of, but I enjoy them. I think they're fun. So I think this one has, I couldn't tell you anything about any of the characters from the last show, aside from the villain, who ends up being the villain. And yeah, this one just has better characters because I honestly latched on to them more. I thought they were more interesting, and I enjoyed them a lot more. So another pro of this show is it doesn't take 12 episodes to get to the point, and it really doesn't waste your time like the TV show did. So that's another bonus point to Blood-C. But unfortunately, while it is better than the show narratively, we do suffer from... It's just crazy. In the final 20 minutes of the movie, they're just dropping, twist continuously after twist on top of each other. They're just dogpiling twist, endlessly. I'm not even joking. There are so many twists at the end of this movie, and one of them doesn't even honestly make any damn sense to me. For anyone who's seen the movie, there's this weird line that Saya drops after a big thing happens at the very end, where she has this "I'm so alone" sentiment, which hasn't been present throughout the entirety of the show or the movie. The show had a lot more of her trying to find her identity, and in the movie, she's just hell-bent on revenge because of what happened in the show. There's nothing to do with loneliness or anything similar. So yeah, I really don't know where all of that came from or why that's included in the ending. But overall, if gun to head, I have to choose between Blood-C, The Last Ark, or Blood-C, I'm going to choose this movie because it has less it actually has less action than the show does, because the show kind of had a per episode monster, and this one I can only really think of 3 big fights that happen in this one, and technically a fourth if you want to count the last interaction, but I wouldn't count the last interaction as a fight, honestly, because there's no opposition. There's no opposition, and yeah, it kind of lacks as much action as the show had, which is crazy. But I do believe that it ultimately is stronger in pretty much every other department than the show was. Aside from it still being a poor narrative, it's still a better narrative than what the TV show had. So honestly, if for whatever reason Blood-Sea the Last Arc happens to come into your atmosphere, if it's put on, if some crazy fuck puts it on at a party or something, I wouldn't be against seeing the Last Arc again. I would be against watching Blood-Sea again. Maybe I would watch it if we use the speedrun method that I've talked about, where you really only watch 6 episodes. Because honestly, the episodes that you're dodging in that filler list, you don't really miss anything, and the story doesn't really pick up narratively aside from the mentioned episodes. So yeah, I wouldn't mind watching the movie again with no stipulations. The movie I would watch happily. It'd be a fun one to watch. It'd be a fun one to throw on at a party. Like it's got kind of popcorn value to it, you know, where there's some brain dead action with little bits of story thrown in between. Even if there's less action than the show, I still think that the movie's more so worth watching than what we got with Blood-Sea. So sorry, Blood-Sea fans. Shouts out to the Last Arc fans. You're getting your roses during this episode. Go watch Blood-Sea the Last Arc. Don't watch Blood-Sea on its own. Really not worthwhile. And I'll be honest, you know, I don't know the other Blood TV show, the other Blood manga. I don't know anything about it. Blood Plus, whatever it is. I haven't seen it. And frankly, after watching Blood-Sea, and I know that Blood-Sea is like a reboot. It's kind of like, it's its own thing. But it's just been so bad that it's kind of put me off from wanting to check out the rest of the series. Let me know if that's a mistake. If you've seen any of the Blood movie or the other Blood TV show, let me know if I'm making a mistake by putting off the other media in the Blood franchise, because I've heard people speak pretty highly of the other ones, and I thought people spoke highly of this one, but now I'm just kind of shocked and appalled that anyone would recommend this to me. So, let alone recommend it to a huge audience, you know? Wow. But yeah, that's where I kind of find myself with Blood-Sea and Blood-Sea the Last Arc. Let me know if I need to check out, you know, more Blood animes, if there's ones that are worth watching out there. But otherwise, I want to get into our next topic, so I'm going to do that. Our last anime of the day, and my personal recommendation, Land of the Lustrous. Now, this is a really cool action fantasy, kind of post-apocalyptic in nature, though you wouldn't get that from looking at screen caps of this, that it's post-apocalyptic, but you should definitely check it out. And I think this is probably one of the best uses of like 3D CGI animation I've ever seen. I don't want to spoil anything about this, and as a matter of fact, I want you to go into this totally blind. So I'm going to talk about this one pretty vaguely, so as to not give away too much, but I do highly recommend that you watch this one. I had a blast watching this one. This is one that Star brought to me. This is one that Star introduced to me. And I pretty immediately caught on to why Star was super interested in it because of the names of the characters. The character designs here, and don't let me undersell this. This is a beautiful anime. For being 3D animated, it is peak. It's so beautiful. Every shot is immaculate. The character design is awesome. I really highly recommend this anime purely on the aesthetics alone, but then you also get into the story where it's got a great narrative. A great narrative with a lot of intrigue and mystery kind of lined throughout it, with some pretty tightly animated action as well. The action scenes in this one work really, really well and have a lot of weight to them, which was a problem that I had with Blood-Sea, where I never felt like Saya was in any incredible danger because she could just get out of it. Whereas in this one, the enemies in this, they're called Lunarians. The enemies in this, the Lunarians, have a very cool kind of like big, biblically accurate angel design. And they're really fucking intimidating. They're really intimidating creatures. They have a piece of soundtrack that plays every time they show up, and it sends chills down my spine. I'm like, oh fuck, the Lunarians are here. And yeah, I really feel for a lot. I don't want to see anything bad happen to a lot of the characters in this show, but a lot of bad things happen to a lot of the characters in this show. That's some of my favorite characters. Foss, who is the main character in this show, she's awesome. I also like Cinnabar. I like Amethyst, 24 and 38. They're, I believe, twins in the show. So, without getting too much into it, I think that this anime works really well. It's got a great story. It's got great visuals and incredible fight scenes, great enemies. It's just kind of great stuff all around, sprinkled throughout. The only downside to this anime that I'm going to give you, and it's something that really bummed me out after we finished watching it, because me and Star, we binged this, and I'm pretty sure we finished it the same day we started watching it. If we didn't, we finished it the next day. But we were watching this one kind of endlessly, and at the very end of it, I was so pulled in by the story. I felt really gripped. I wanted to see what happened next. I was super curious. And the anime just kind of ends, and you think to yourself, wow, I can't wait to watch the next season. And then you find out there's not a next season. So the real downside to this show is the fact that it ends, and you can't wait to watch more of it, but there's not more of it. There's not more of it to be seen. It ends, the manga goes on. You could read the manga, but as you know, AnimeSub listeners, you know that I'm an anime-only Andy. So when I learned that the manga continues this, I went, oh, well, fuck. So I honestly really hope someone hears this. I hope someone in the industry hears me begging, pleading to you. Please give us more Land of the Lustrous. This is an awesome anime. Great characters, great character design, well animated in 3D with some incredible scenic shots and just such a tightly wound narrative. Tightly wound narrative that just pulls you in, and it's kind of unrelenting. It's got a great pace. Every episode kind of flew by for me. Every episode flew by, and I would find myself just anticipating the very next one. I want to see what happens next constantly in this show. So when it ended, and the ending would be satisfactory if we ever got more, but due to the fact that this came out in 2017, and we have not gotten any more of this anime since then, I find myself rapidly disappointed by the ending just because I want more of this. The anime was so good, I want them to provide me with more. But there's not more to be provided. I would have to continue in the manga. That is the real downside to Land of the Lustrous. Despite all of the incredible pros and what a good anime this is, it's definitely one of my favorites for sure. It became one of my favorites very quickly. I think by episode 4 or 5, I was purely sucked in. So imagine my disappointment when I find out that after this, there's nothing left. So, damn. There's a lot of amazing one season animes out there, but if you're going to be a one season anime, you got to wrap up the storyline too. You can't just leave me in perpetuity wondering what could have been if they had continued on with this show. And that about wraps it up for this week's episode of AnimeSubbed. In the comments section, discuss, animes that ended too early for you. Or discuss one-season animes that are peak, like Cowboy Bebop or Samurai Champloo. And for that matter, tell me what to watch next. I've got a couple of animes on the docket that I'm currently working my way through that I plan on doing an anime subbed on. But I would love to hear from you, the audience. What should I be watching? So, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. I hope you enjoyed AnimeSub. And I will see you next time whenever we AnimeSub next time. So have a wonderful day, everybody. I'll see you then.